Peace and love. 00 on the clock. Sending you all positive energy, high vibe, success on your entrepreneurship, all love, all positivity. Today I'm going to be speaking about the winter solstice and how it's celebrated in African descent. Now, the winter solstice dates runs between June the 21st and June the 22nd. Okay, it is symbolic of the sun being at its lowest point. Okay, so in the winter we have the shortest days and also the longest nights. Okay, always be familiar when we're dealing with the hemispheres. We experience different seasons, different hemisphere. For an example, in the northern hemisphere, when we are experiencing the winter, the southern hemisphere is experiencing the summer. So, little bit of my personal experience. I always resonated with being warm. I was a warm-blooded individual. As I tapped into my true divinity, okay, I had the understanding that in December and January, African descent, southern hemisphere in the east is the warmest time. And that's why I'm in the northern hemisphere, right? And I never care too much for the winter. And that's why, because it describes when we find out our rising sign, it lets us know where we were born when we first came out our mother's womb, when the sun was on the eastern horizon. That's why it's very important, if we are searching for our soul purpose, to tap in to the energy of our birth charts. When we do, it lets us know the energy of ourselves. It lets us know how can we resonate with nature and be in perfect alignment. So now I'm aware that I always knew in my soul, African descent, celebration, the heat in January and December is the hottest times I will be actually traveling to the area. And it just lets me know my alignments, because when I went and I traveled to Florida and Miami on my solar returns, it's not the southern hemisphere, but it resonated with me more because I was in the heat. So I love the energy. I was like more in alignment. Okay, so always be familiar with that. In my comments, I'm going to place the info on your rising sign. I have them all broke down. So if you want to tap into astrology, you're at the right place. Okay, so they celebrate the original Trinity that derived from ancient Kemet. Okay, one of the first African base that practiced African spirituality was ancient Kemet. Okay, so they worship their ancient ancestors on the winter solstice. Okay, and they also worship the actual original Holy Trinity, the creation story, which is Asar, Aset, and Haru. Okay, I'll place the story of them in my description below. Okay, but what had happened was Aset and Asar, they are the founding father and founding mother of ancient Kemet. They practiced their righteous principles throughout Kemet, and it helped the netters to live righteously throughout Kemet. Okay, so Asar had a brother that was known to be Set. He was low vibrating energy. He was known to be chaos, destruction, and envious of his brother. Okay, he killed Asar cut his body up into several pieces, spread them throughout Kemet. Set, his divine counterpart, put all the remains of his body together, okay? Made the first mummy in human history, also made a first amulet because she couldn't find one piece, made it, and then she turned into a falcon bird, or known to be a ba, okay? Ba is seen to be human face with bird body, or a whole bird, falcon bird, okay? She hovered over him, he erected, and Haru was created, okay? That is the original Holy Trinity that derived from Kemet, okay? So, in winter solstice, they celebrate the death of Asar, and we all do know after death there's always life, and that's what we have the understanding of when we know the creation story of the Holy Trinity, okay? We know that Aset got impregnated by her deceased husband spirit, okay? They also worship the dead, okay? They worship the ones that went on to the afterlife. So they put offerings in the coffins all around them, okay, to show nourishment of the soul. And they also pour water, okay? They also worship the sun, okay? So they call it Sankar, okay? And Sankar is symbolic to the sunken place, okay? It describes the journey of the sun, okay? The sun was split into two pieces, and they call that Duat, okay? And it's symbolic to the heavens above as the skies, the heaven. Below is the darkness, the underworld, and it shows us correspondence as well. What happens above and in the heavens also happens in the underworld, okay? So we all have the understanding that once we are familiar with the allegories, it describes how our everyday living is based on having soul evolution, having the understanding that we're going to have to go in the dark to reach the light. We're going to have to discern our path and go through not so good times, and they for growth and expansion. So when we think of the sun, it's also symbolic to the coffin one, because that's the darkest place, okay? And the sun has a cycle where it changes the energy every hour, okay? And the coffin one is symbolic to the darkness, self-discernment. Always be familiar with that. And when we deal with the energy of the moon, okay, the new moon describes the darkest time, okay? So around 12 a.m. and 3 a.m. in ancient Kemet, they did powerful rituals, okay? And it was to have the nourishment of the soul of the deceased. Also, it was known that the actual deceased transformed into birds, and they communicated to the healers in Kemet, okay? Always be familiar with that. So when we think of the season of the winter solstice, we think of the energy of death and rebirth, okay? Hibernation like the bear, okay? A dark moment, us tapping into our darkness and our shadow side and saying, what do I need to release to help me vibrate on a high frequency of love? What do I need to add on to help me to have soul evolution? And everybody experiences is going to be different, and that's fine. But what is essential for me on my journey to help me have soul evolution? So when we're dealing with tarot cards, we have the Hermit that is symbolic to the energy of being calm, going in and hibernating, having self-discernment, okay? And when we deal with the Fool energy of the tarot cards describes taking a leap of faith, okay? Basically, discerning a path, seeing which way you want to go. And yes, we have to be able to tap in and tap into the energy of being an adventure and taking a leap of faith and see what's all the different aspects in the world that we can add on layers to help us have soul evolution. Okay? And just like the saying said, I went out into the forest to lose myself, to find my soul. And that's basically what it's all about. I always be familiar with that. So this gives us a time to be still. When we are in a state of calmness, we tapping into the darkness and the unknown. That is a space where we create the most beautiful things. 111 on the clock. So don't never be afraid to tap in, discern your path, meditate. Because when we do, it helps us to connect with the higher forces of the gods. And it helps us to tap into our higher intuition and be able to have soul evolution. And that's what it's about. It's about being creative. It's about being love. And it's about helping others. And that's what they were trying to show us in traditions worldwide. So we have traditions that celebrate Christmas in different ways. We have in ancient Greek, they had a god known to be Saturn. And they celebrated him for 12 whole days. Okay. Then we have the Urula tribe, and they celebrated for 12 days, with both of them celebrating traditions, okay, with festivals, food, also incorporating the mistletoe. And it just shows us that we can take on all the different knowledge of different traditions worldwide. Longs is to help us to have soul evolution, to learn something new, to look at things with a bird's eye view, and just see what we can discern. And also see what we can add to our path to help us live abundant, blissful life. Always be familiar with that. So when we think of the monuments in Kemet, they were aligned perfectly with the sun, the moon, and the stars. When we're dealing with the domes as well. So it just shows us that astrology, the sun, the moon, the stars, the pyramids were in perfect alignment. And they showed us how we are connected with nature. And once we tap into nature, it's our true divinity. Okay? And that's how the ancients communicated. 333 on the clock. And that's why they called themselves Natter. Because they resonated with portion, vibration, energy, frequency, angles. And it helped them to align perfectly with the harmonizing field of love. Okay? Once we operating out of that space, that's when we create the most beautiful things. And we tap into divine oneness of love. So, on this time, it helps you to be able to tap in and align with the winter solstice. Know the knowledge of African descent, what they were studying. And you can also tap in 1414 on the clock and be able to honor and worship the ancestors just like they did. Worship the story of the original Holy Trinity and help to connect and nourish the souls of the ancient ancestors, because they are still here. Invoke the power of the spirits. How we invoke the power of the spirits is knowing their name, knowing what they did, knowing their roles, and connecting with them to show honor. I always be familiar with that. So a powerful ritual that we can take on is to add beautiful green colors. Also snow. Getting a small coffin, wooden coffin like, and placing it at the altar, placing a plate of fresh food. Make sure that we're adding on earth, air, fire, and water. Getting the incense, getting some water, getting fresh food. Also putting a small fan, connecting with the element of air, and harnessing the energy of honoring our ancient ancestors. Also the creation story, and also the story of Amun Ra at his sunken stage, the dark stage. Okay, always be familiar with that, and honoring Asar, Aset, and Haru. Okay, I love you all. I'm sending you all positive energy and high vibrations. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. You hit the like button, and you leave me any comments or questions in my description below. 555 on the clock. I love you all, and I'll be back with more. Peace and love.